Hi, I'm Ben, and I've been gardening for more than 30 years. And in that time, I've come to realise there are some essential crops I absolutely have to have in my garden every year, no matter what. Today, I'll reveal what they are and why I consider them so indispensable. I can't even begin to imagine a gardening year without the loudest characters of all, zucchini or courgettes, of course. This warm season staple is the gift that keeps on giving, and just a few plants can keep a family and fruits all summer long. In fact, I reckon it's the most productive crop of all. They love a mega rich soil lavished with loads of organic matter such as garden-made compost or manure. Now start them off in mid-spring, a couple of weeks before your last frost date, then grow them on somewhere warm to plant out after all danger of frost has passed. My best tips for these heavy croppers are simple enough. Keep the soil well watered, and to help with that, I like to bank the soil up in a ring around the plants to trap the moisture so that it can properly sink in and not just run off. I also like to cut off any old and tattered leaves to encourage younger replacements to follow, and of course the big one, cut the fruits while they're still quite young and tender for the best taste and texture, and to encourage more to follow. But perhaps my biggest pro tip is to grow more than one plant. Now some people claim one plant is often enough. It isn't. You really need 2 or even 3 to ensure good cross-pollination between plants, which really will encourage more fruits to form. It's also worth early on in the season hand-pollinating flowers to get them started, and I've done a video on that which I will link to down below. This season I'm going to grow a variety that's spineless called Tuscany. Now that should make picking the fruits a lot less painful, and this variety also displays good resistance to mildew and it copes well in cooler summers. Ideal for my garden then. It's impossible to beat the sheer intensity of aroma and flavour that comes from tomatoes you've grown yourself. It beats anything you can buy in the shops. These here are the very last of last summer's tomatoes, just about hanging on in there. For me, tomatoes are absolute winners because of the sheer mind-boggling diversity of both types and varieties you can grow, from sweet pop-in-the-mouth cherry tomatoes to great big ballsy beefsteaks that will form the centrepiece to a salad with attitude. Heirloom or heritage varieties have some real crackers among them, many with a story to tell. There's the gorgeously striped zebra tomatoes, fleshy types for sauces like Amish paste, and meaty monsters such as Mortgage Lifter, which was so popular when it launched in the 1930s that the chap behind them earned enough to completely pay off his home loan within 6 years. I need to find myself a plant like that. My top tip for growing tomatoes in a damp climate like mine is to grow them under cover if you can. This will keep the foliage drier, which will reduce the risk of diseases such as blight. But if you have no undercover space, no worries. Just be sure to pick a blight-resistant variety of tomato. Now these varieties are an absolute game changer. Your tomatoes may well get infected with blight, but they will still push on through and continue to fruit. Pretty impressive. Of course, if you are in a hotter, drier climate, then lucky you, you'll have loads of varieties to choose from. So tomatoes like to be planted into a warm, sunny position into nice nutrient-rich soil. It's not very photogenic at the moment, but what I'm doing here is barrowing on lots of lovely, well-decomposed manure to help restore fertility for next year. Then once they are growing, ensure that they're properly staked, stringed or caged to support your plants, and remove the side shoots or suckers of vining tomatoes to encourage good airflow. Cutting off the lowest leaves will also help with air circulation, and all of that will reduce the risk of disease. Now once your plants get going, be sure to mulch them and water regularly to avoid problems with things like blossom end rot. Tomatoes are hungry plants, so once they start to flower, I like to go in with a liquid tomato feed every week or two to help the fruits set, swell and ripen. And once they are ripened, well, be sure to pick them promptly to encourage more fruits. Climbing beans are always going to be a winner because unlike many crops, they grow up and not out, and that makes for a really efficient use of space. Every garden needs climbing beans for their good looks too. Now they add real vertical interest. Train them up trellis, a teepee of bamboo canes, or up an archway like this so that they can grow up and out and then dangle down with their pods. Once they're cloaked in foliage and brought alive with dangling pods, well, I reckon you've got yourself quite the eye-catcher. Beans are very easy to grow. Sow the chunky seeds in mid-spring, then keep them frost-free once they are up. Transplant outside against suitable supports after all danger of frost has passed. They love rich soil, so prepare the ground in advance by laying on top a generous cushion of garden compost or well-rotted manure. The vines should find their own way up, and once they start to flower, it won't be long before the pods are coming thick and fast. Just make sure to keep picking them to keep them coming. My insider tip is to try a purple or yellow podded variety. Not only do they look stunning against the green foliage, they're also easier to spot and pick, making picking less of a game of hide and seek. Another option if you struggle to keep up with picking and the pods really do come thick and fast is to grow beans specifically for harvesting right at the end of the season for drying. Now some varieties like the speckled borlotti types can be picked young to enjoy as tender pods, then left to grow on and mature for shelling and drying. That way you're essentially getting two crops in one. In case you're interested, here is what I use to plan my garden every year. Now our garden planner has been in development since 2006 and is the biggest and best garden planner in the world. You can try it completely free using our 7-day trial, and there's no need to put in any card details or anything like that. You can even make your plan and then print it off along with your planting schedule to keep you on track for the rest of the year. Give the garden planner a try. Just follow the QR code or the link there to start your free trial. If I had to pick just one bulb, it has to be garlic, and here's mine here. That's because it's pretty much foolproof. You plant the pleasingly plump cloves in autumn, and then it pretty much is left to get on with it until it's time to harvest. This really is a low maintenance crop. Not only is it easy to grow, it stores really well too, as well as adding, of course, that lovely pungent deliciousness to just about any dish. Plant the cloves from mid-autumn to early winter to harvest the following summer, setting them about 4 to 6 inches or 10 to 15 centimetres apart into well-drained soil. If winters are cold where you are, mulch heavily to protect them from the worst of the frost, though garlic really is exceptionally hardy, especially the hardneck varieties. If your priority is lots of garlic for storage, then my tip is to choose a softneck variety, because those guys store for the longest. Planting at the correct depth is important too. You want to plant the cloves so at least 1 inch or 3 centimetres of soil sits above the top of the clove. Now if your soil gets really wet over winter, don't worry, you can plant them into pots or chunky plug trays to grow on under cover and then plant out in spring once the soil has dried out a bit. But look, if you think you've left it too late, don't worry. There are varieties suitable for planting in the spring, so you can still have yourself a lovely harvest this growing season. Leafy greens are famously good for us, especially if we grow them ourselves. Garden-grown produce is often more nutritious than conventional field-grown vegetables, and that's because we have the time and patience to lavish the soil with love to replace all of the nutrients taken up in the crop, including all of those micronutrients, with good, wholesome organic matter. And as an organic gardener, I can make sure that all of the produce I grow is completely free of chemicals. I really love spinach because it's one of the very earliest vegetables you can get on and sow while it's still quite fresh out. Now you can make sowings from late winter through spring and on into early summer, making the earliest sowings under the cover of a greenhouse cold frame or say hoop house to coax those seedlings along. Now for the earliest sowings, in fact most of them, I like to sow into little plug trays like this, and then I grow them on as small seedlings to plant outside, spacing them about 8 inches or 20 centimetres apart in both directions. Spinach can bolt or go to seed early in the season, so my first tip is to pick a slow to bolt variety. That means you'll get more pickings before the plants eventually stretch out to flower. If you're growing in the heat of summer, then spinach is one of those really valuable plants that will actually thrive in light shade. Very handy when you're trying to work out what to grow in those nigglesome areas. Now for a continuous supply of beautiful iron-rich leaves, grow several plants or a couple of rows, then just take 1 or 2 leaves from each plant on each passing. No one grows potatoes to save money. After all, they're so cheap in the shops. Cheap as chips, you might say. So what is the point of growing them? Well, if you've never tried your own new season or new potatoes, you haven't lived. Unearthing those lovely golden nuggets is just that, the golden ticket to heavenliness. And potatoes will grow anywhere, in the ground, in raised beds, in containers like this, so that anyone can grow them, even balcony gardeners. And you can enjoy a super early start by keeping your potatoes in a protected space until it's warmed up outside. Now I enjoyed a really early harvest this way before the end of spring, and it was a delightful first harvest of potatoes. Just be sure to keep containers shaded from hot sun. Like tomatoes, potatoes can be susceptible to blight, so I like to avoid disappointment by simply growing a blight-resistant variety. Slugs can sometimes be an issue too, so harvest promptly or grow early varieties that will be harvested before they have a chance to get in and nibble them. Do your potatoes ever get affected by slugs? I feel for you. Let me know about it in the comments. By the way, I've pulled together a playlist featuring full how-to videos on each of these must-grow crops, which you will find at the end of the video. Beetroots are both sweet and earthy, a heady combination that lends them as much to roasting as it does to grating them for a fresh and zingy slaw. I grow carrots too, but beetroot is my must-grow root vegetable because it's just inexplicably expensive in the shops. But really, there's that wonderful range of varieties to try. There's the deep red beets that we all know and love, yellow ones, but most mesmerising of all is the stripy candy cane or chioggia beet. Just look at it. It's stunning, isn't it? Grow them in a sunny position in moist but well-drained soil. Now you can sow beetroot directly into rows spaced about 1 foot or 30 centimetres apart, and then thin the seedlings in stages until they are around 2 to 3 inches or 5 to 7 centimetres apart. But my preferred way to grow them is by sowing a scant pinch of seeds into plug trays to plant out as a cluster of 4 to 5 seedlings spaced at around 10 inches or 25 centimetres apart in both directions. The very best, truly exceptional flavour comes from roots harvested on the young side, around the size of a golf ball. But if you really love your beets, well, you really should grow some to store over winter. Make a final sowing in midsummer to grow on into autumn for a winter-ready cache of roots. In milder areas like mine, you can just lift the roots as they are needed to enjoy. But if you're in a cold climate, lift up all of the roots and pack them into boxes of damp sand or compost to store in a frost-free place where they should keep until spring. And for more advice on starting a vegetable garden, why not download the completely free abridged version of my book? It's over 100 pages long and includes lots more on growing beets, potatoes and tomatoes, as well as a host of other practical projects to keep your green fingers and thumbs busy. Just follow the link or scan the QR code to grab yours. I'll catch you next time.